Hello, my name is Dr. Philippa Bennett, and I'm a senior lecturer in English here at the University of Northampton. And the rebel I want to talk to you about today is William Morris. William Morris is much better known these days as a Victorian artist and craftsman. We'll see his prints like willow pattern on all sorts of items that you can buy in National Trust shops up and down the country. But actually, what Morris would most have wanted to be remembered for was his political stance. He grew up in an affluent middle-class household, he went to private school, and he had all the comforts of life laid out for him. But in 1883, he crossed what he himself called a river of fire to join the Socialist Movement. Now, it might not seem such a big deal for us these days to join a political party, but the Socialist Movement was in its infancy at this point in Britain, and it was seen as an extremely radical thing to do for somebody whose politics would have been much more liberal or Whig, as they would have been known in the 19th century. Morris joined the Social Democratic Federation in 1883. He later left that and joined with people like Eleanor Marx to form the Socialist League in 1884, and then eventually the Hammersmith Socialist Society in 1890. He published widely in the socialist journals, Justice, which was the publication of the Social Democratic Federation, and later Commonweal, which was a publication of the Socialist League. He also campaigned tirelessly. He travelled up and down the country, speaking at working men's clubs and gatherings, preaching the tenets of socialism, calling for working men and women to unite together and to agitate for revolution. Morris was not an easy revolutionary. He didn't like the idea at all of any kind of violent uprising. It broke his heart to think that people might have to suffer and die in bringing about a new society. But he also knew that the vested interests of those in power with wealth and authority and privilege were not going to yield easily to any agitation for a more socialist, more equitable way of life. Morris's revolutionary vision is set out wonderfully in his Utopia, News from Nowhere. Lots of copies of that available, and really can recommend it as a wonderful read if we want to think about why we live the way we do and how we might change that. Morris was very clear that his utopian future was not a blueprint, it was simply a vision of how he saw the future to be. He's very clear that utopias are always, he says, an expression of their writer's temperament and interests and ideas. News from Nowhere is quite a challenging book. There's no parliament in that book. The Houses of Parliament have in fact become a dung market. There's no marriage because he sees marriage as simply a bartering, a commodity exchange in which women usually suffer. And there are no prisons because Morris feels that the root causes of crime is social injustice and inequality, and that if we reform social conditions, crime will of its own accord disappear. There's lots to debate and lots to challenge in that book and to argue about, but it's a fantastic statement of hope, of faith, of optimism in the human capacity to change things for the better. And never once did Morris lose sight of the fact that this can be a better place to live for everyone. I leave you with a brief quotation at the end. When Guest, the time traveller to nowhere, has to go back to 19th century Britain. And Ellen, the wonderful enigmatic woman who is in that future society of nowhere in the 22nd century, says to him, go back and be the happier for having seen us. Go back for having added hope to your struggle. Go on living while you may, striving with whatsoever labour and pain needs must be to build up little by little the new day of fellowship and rest and happiness. There's my rebel, the wonderful William Morris.